Good afternoon and welcome to the Lunchtime Series with me, Ken Britz, leading the charge with insights, information, and ultimately effective results. Joining me in today's leadership and coaching segment, we have a remarkable man joining us, a man who broke his neck playing football from Cornell University in 1970, leaving him almost totally paralyzed from the shoulders down. After a lengthy hospitalization, he returned to Cornell, where he completed his undergraduate degree in engineering. Then he earned a Master's of Arts degree at Cornell in education, as well as a Master of Education degree at Columbia University in psychology. He became a nationally certified rehabilitation counselor. He worked for more than 2 years at Abilities Inc., where he provided vocational and placement counseling to severely disabled individuals. And wanting to accomplish still more, he enrolled in Hofstra University School of Law. And after 40 years of the Nassau County Assistant District Attorney, where he became a deputy bureau chief. He's now married and he has triplet boys. Please welcome to the show the unbelievable Ken Kunken. Ken, how are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great. And thank you for that very kind introduction.
Yeah, it's looking at your story and reading about it it's phenomenal to know that there are men in the world like yourself who have been able to do what you do. It's so important, and I think in the world that we live in today, we need inspiration. We need men just like you to show that there's more to it than we think sometimes. But very often, also just not feeling like we're grateful enough. But Ken, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me as your guest and giving me the opportunity to tell a little bit about my story. And the first thing I would just like to add is I had a lot of help and support every step of the way. There is nothing I would have been able to do on my own. And I was very fortunate that my family and friends provided that help.
Yeah, I can just imagine the support structure would just be phenomenal for you to be able to get to this point. It's a story worth telling. So, Ken, yeah, why do you think it's important to keep expectations high for yourself and for others? Because being in the position you're in, I can only imagine it being quite the trajectory. It could have played out many ways, and yet you've accomplished so much and you've done so much. It's remarkable. Why is it important to keep expectations high?
Kevin, when I was first injured and in the rehab facility, it seemed like the best the medical personnel thought that I would ever be able to do would be to someday sell magazine subscriptions over the telephone. And this really struck me and was devastating. Here, I had been a junior studying industrial engineering at one of the most prestigious schools in the country. And then I injured my neck and not my head. And suddenly people had such limited expectation for what I would be able to eventually do. And I saw many of my fellow patients didn't seem to be doing much with their lives. And I think a lot of that had to do with they were not encouraged to do more. People just didn't seem to believe that there was more that they could do. I was fortunate my family and friends always did believe in me and had the confidence to be able to tell me that they knew I could do a lot more with my life than most people expected. And thanks to their help and support, I was determined to show that there's an awful lot somebody with a disability can do.
Yeah, I think that's a significant point because, and usually because of a disability, place a measurement on that. But yet, as you've rightly proved so many, and for the last 40, 50 years, that it's very possible to challenge that notion, to challenge perception, to challenge the idea that just because you have an injury and it's a disability, you're limited.
My attitude has always been just because something has not been done before doesn't mean you cannot do it now. You just really have to challenge yourself, work hard, have self confidence, and believe that if you set your mind to a goal, you can accomplish it.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, Ken, like the next question is, what keeps you going?
My family, without a doubt, it's my family. As you mentioned, I'm married and the father of triplet boys. All three of them are now sophomores at three separate colleges in upstate New York. doing absolutely great, pursuing 3 different majors, and looking at them and seeing how well they're doing, having my wife by my side, that keeps me going and inspired every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's and having triplet boy is such a gift as well. But what motivates you? Because in the face of adversity, it's so easy to stumble and fall and not want to, have to get back in that the troubles that we face, that life throws at us. What motivates you? Like, what gets you up and makes you want to do more and do all you've got?
Part of that is, again, takes me back to my family. They've done so much to help me achieve that I felt I'd be letting them down if I didn't do everything I possibly could to make a success out of my life. And now, of course, when I see my boys and how well they're doing and how hard they're working, I felt, I'd be letting them down as well if I didn't provide the example for them and for others. And I also want to show people that there's an awful lot people with disabilities can do if they're given the opportunity. Now, when I was first injured, I didn't know of any other role models that I could look to for inspiration or motivation. They may have been there. I mean, I've been hurt more than 54 years now. They may have been there, but I just didn't see them. Part of that had to do with when I was first injured, that was well before the Americans with Disabilities Act took effect. And many facilities were not accessible to somebody in a wheelchair. Now that they are, you see more and more people with disabilities in public places and in the workforce, and people are realizing we are no different than anybody else. We have the same needs, wants, and desires as everyone. And once given the opportunity, we can be very effective workers and contributors to society.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And you say the word role models, and part of what we do on the show and part of what we often reflect back on is leadership. And if I look at you and I look at your story, there's leadership qualities there, and there's a role model there that people just don't often recognize as role models. And yet, as you say, people with disabilities can be recognized when they are given the opportunity to do that. Do you believe that, or do you, just from your viewpoint, do you believe that part of this role that you're sharing and putting out there into public domain, there's a beautiful leadership quality to what it is you're sharing?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no reason why somebody should have such limited expectations for somebody just because they have a disability. And I think once given the opportunity, people can thrive and show everyone we can accomplish as much as anybody else once given the opportunity. And it was interesting when I decided to work at the district attorney's office. I didn't know of any other quadriplegics that were trial attorneys before I became one. Again, there may have been some, but I was not aware of them. And my feeling and attitude was, why couldn't I do something like that? There was no reason to think, somebody in my condition couldn't do something like that. Now, the issue was, will I be given the opportunity to show that? And I was fortunate that the district attorney where I was living, was a very self-confident, progressive individual who placed his hiring decisions on my abilities rather than my disability. And that made all the difference.
And I think that's sort of the signature perspective is, are you even seeing the ability rather than the disability? I think that's a beautiful frame for many people listening to able to kind of see that. So, I mean, you mentioned trial attorney. I mean, you're just an amazing man with that's done so many things. Why become a trial attorney? Like, why did you want to do that?
I wanted to do that. I used to watch my brother in court. He was a trial attorney. Of course, he worked on the other side. He was a defense attorney. I became a prosecutor. But I figured that, with all my physical disabilities, the one thing it didn't affect was my voice. I could still talk. And I felt that as a trial attorney, I could use my voice, to argue my side of an issue. So I felt that may be the best way to utilize my strengths is to actually be in the court and argue a case. And I might add that what happened is I went to law school and completed law school in the standard 3-year time period. I passed a very difficult New York State bar exam the first time that I took it. I began my job by participating in a very intensive 4-week training program where they taught us all aspects of trial techniques from a prosecutor's perspective. And I was so proud to go to court my first day, only to find I couldn't fit through the swinging doorways in the courtroom. They were too narrow to allow me to get through in my electric wheelchair. So those were challenges I wasn't even anticipating I would have to face in my new career. But they were all surmountable. And with everybody's help, I was able to get into court and argue many cases.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic, and that's, as you say, from the abilities that you do had, you have a voice, and you have this beautiful mind that's capable of many things. And I just come back to role models. I think, in the world, if we look at leadership in the world today, we need new role models. We need role models that defy the odds, that can absolutely challenge the norms and showcase and share, what people are capable of, because we don't often see these types of role models.
I was looking for role models at the time. And again, I didn't see people that were doing things that I wanted to do, who were in
Yeah.
my condition. Now, many years later, Christopher Reeve, the famous actor who played Superman, became a tremendous role model for people with disabilities, and in particular, people with spinal cord injuries. But Christopher Reeve wasn't injured until 25 years after my injury. And it would have been so helpful for me to have somebody like Christopher Reeve to look to for inspiration and motivation to see what somebody could actually do. But I made up my mind that perhaps I could show people that there's an awful lot someone with a disability could do. I enjoyed my work very much as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, where I worked at Abilities Incorporated for a number of years, but I felt there was still more that I could do. And I wanted to get out and basically help the community as a whole. And, while I'm still devoted to doing everything I can to help people with disabilities, I thought working in a job like the district attorney's office, I'd have even more impact on people. Because here I would go before a lot of people in the courtroom, whether it be jurors or witnesses or spectators, and without ever saying a word about my disability, I was showing people that somebody in my condition could not only work, but work well, and not just at an entry level position, but in a very high level position. And I'm very proud of the fact that I was given that opportunity, that people had the confidence in me to allow me to show what I could do and to have this career that I ended up having.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the important part of having those role models, because the role models come in different shapes and sizes and ways, and in situations that we don't even expect. And thankfully, you have been one of those examples to so many that society or perception hasn't allowed for, and yet you've done it. And one of those things you've done is you've written a book. The book's called "I Dream of Things That Never Were: The Ken Kunken Story."
Well, I actually started writing that book soon after I was injured. While I was still a patient in the hospital, a good friend of my Aunt Lorraine's by the name of Albert Meglin visited me in a rehab facility and thought, one, it may help me deal with the depression I was going through at the time, to talk about what I was going through, but also to let other people know what it was like to have a spinal cord injury and to go through the rehabilitation process. And with his help, I started working on this book more than 50 years ago. And I would start and stop and start and stop over the years. And finally, after I got married and had children, my wife helped convince me that I had a story that really needed to be told, to let people know there is so much somebody can do in life, no matter what challenges you face. So with my wife's help, we sat down by her, typing on her laptop computer, and we wrote my book. And let me just tell you where I got the title from. I Dream of Things That Never Were. While I was still a patient in the rehab facility, I was asked to testify before a United States Health Subcommittee chaired by Senator Edward Kennedy. And 8 days after my testimony, Senator Kennedy sent me a glass paperweight in the mail that had an inscription on it that the senator said his late brother, Robert Kennedy, liked very much. And the words on that inscription have always been very meaningful to me. The inscription read, "Some men see things as they are and say why. I dream of things that never were and say why not." And that's the message I wanted to convey to people.
Wow, that's such a beautiful, beautiful sentiment. And thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, and I think that's exactly what you're doing. Just I dream of things that never were, and you take an action to them. And in the face of that, you've created some amazing things in life. But I mean, can you tell us, part of this life that you've lived. There's a lot of stress that comes with that, and a lot of challenges that someone who's able-bodied doesn't even perceive or even understand. But so the stress that comes with that must be quite significant. How do you deal with stress?
That's really difficult. That's one of the unseen challenges most people don't realize somebody in my condition face. I mean, before my injury, I used to be able to deal with stress by going out on the football field and, taking out all my frustrations and anxieties by running into people, and doing something very physical. Now I've got to do it more mentally and not physically. And to me, it just helps sitting outside and being with nature and, let's say, looking at a nice scene of water or trees or flowers. But I would say today, my best stress relievers are my boys, my three children. Just spending time with them, seeing how happy they are and how well they're doing. That's my best stress reliever.
Yeah, it's a worthwhile kind of stress reliever, absolutely. And tell us, what is it like to be a father to triplet boys? Because the dynamics change, and I'm just I have a daughter, and she's 16, turning 17. That is its own kind of challenges. And your triplets are, they're already in college doing their thing. What is it like to being a father to triplet boys?
It's the most wonderful thing in the world. I cannot put into words or begin to describe what a difference they've made in my life, how much I love them, and how proud I am to see how they've been growing up. And, one of the things when we talked about me becoming a father was what role could I play in my children's lives? Since physically I couldn't go out and have a catch with, say, my son, or dance with my daughter, or do so many other things that most parents do with their children. And my wife and I talked about it, and we were convinced there was still a very active role I could play in their lives. I could help give them guidance and help establish that they have the right values, the right character, the right priorities in life, and that they learn the importance of helping others, right? And doing as much with their life as they can to not only make their lives better, but the lives of those around them better as well. And it's been the greatest joy of my life to be helping raise three different boys who are wonderful in every way.
I believe, and I can just imagine. So, Ken, for today's conversation, if you could sort of share a message to people, what do you think you want to be able to share with people, and why do you want to share this message? Tell us more about that.
Well, in America these days, there is a program called Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion,
Yeah.
DEI, it's referred to as. And for some reason, there are some people in government that seem to have a negative opinion of that program. I don't know why that is so. Diversity, equity, inclusion have helped so many people, not just in my condition, but in other people's lives and conditions as well. And if I might just share some stories about that.
Yeah.
In the district attorney's office, when you would leave the job, we would go through what's called an exit interview, where you tell the person in the personnel department what you liked best about the job, and what you thought could be improved. And I'm so proud to say that on a number of occasions, I was told that my fellow assistant district attorneys said that one of the best parts of their job was working with and getting to know me. And now I'm not saying that to boast or brag. I know they were not talking about me as just Ken Kunken. They were talking about meeting, working with, and getting to know someone with a significant disability. Because unless they had a close relative with a disability, most people never came in daily contact with someone with a disability. And for many, it was a revelation what it was like to spend time with somebody who was in a very different physical condition than they were. And obviously, one, they were pleased that it didn't involve any additional work for them. I not only carried my own weight, I was often more productive than many of the people I was working with. But in addition, they showed that I usually had a positive attitude, that I was a hard worker, that I was devoted to the office and loyal to my colleagues. And I might add, just to further the point, that 2 years ago, the current district attorney in Nassau County, Donnelly, actually started an annual award in our office, that she named for me the Kenneth J. Kunken Award, to be given out to the outstanding assistant district attorney every year. That best demonstrates that they had the work ethic and the devotion and loyalty to the office and the respect of their colleagues as well as the guy in the wheelchair. They wanted to show how important it was to have that kind of work ethic. And I'm so proud that they named that award after me. And, I think it's important that people see that for what it is. It helps so many people in so many ways. And here my coworkers are saying it helped them quite a bit in their job.
Yeah, so just to move on from that conversation and I love the fact that you're bringing up the DEI conversation. As you know, what's interesting about it is since certain people have brought it up to such a degree and made such a big hoo-ha about it, it's now, more than ever before, it's in the limelight. It's, on the tip of people's tongues, the importance of why there's departments and DEI departments and why this is a recognized necessity of organizations. And as you say, part of your process has been just being allowed to be in an environment where people didn't anticipate and people taking the best part away from getting to know someone like you. And I think that's, a big, it's again, the just being valued for who you are in as much difference as you are. And the fact that it does bring diversity, it does bring something that's not usual, something that's not the run of the mill kind of person into an environment. And yet it delivers, if not more, substantial leadership and quality thinking and personality into that environment. To have to take all of that away, it seems very unnecessary and quite spiteful.
Absolutely. I mean, we learn so much from each other, particularly people from diverse backgrounds. It opens up a whole new world to many people to see what's out there, what can be done, what people are like. And it helps you deal with people in the community in general, because not everybody is like you. And it's important to learn how to get along with everybody. I think it's just so important.
If you were to leave us with a takeaway message for today's conversation, what would that be?
Well, basically, it would be just because something has not been done before doesn't mean you cannot do it now. You've got to have the self confidence to try new things, to experiment, not be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid to try something just because it's difficult. In fact, sometimes choose to do something not because it's easy, but rather just because it's hard. And it's so important to participate. Don't just sit at home or on the sidelines waiting for something to happen. Good things come to you when you work for them. And it's only when you're actively involved that you have control over the outcome.
Yeah, it's something I try to live by, and just because it hasn't been done in one way doesn't mean it can't be done, right? And again, you're just such a wonderful sounding example of exactly that. So thank you for what you do, and the fact that you're just on the other side of this conversation right now, I think is fantastic. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Guys, so if you want to find out more about Ken Kunken, please go and check it out, kenkunken.com, and we'll put the information in the description box below. And yeah, if you want to know more, that's where you'll find all the information. Ken, it's been such a fantastic pleasure to speak to you and just to share some of your insights and stories and the fact that you just do this. Thank you. I really, it's such a privilege to even get to have this conversation.
Thank you. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story with your listeners.
Absolutely. Ken, have a fantastic week ahead, and thank you for tuning in, and thank you for today's conversation. We'll chat to you soon. Just for now.